What makes a good franchise? That is a good question. Unfortunately, the only honest answer anybody could ever give you to that question, what makes a good franchise or what's the best franchise, would be is it depends. So much of your success as a franchisee is going to depend on you, your skills, what you bring to the table, your ability to sell, your ability to manage people, your ability for good customer service. Less important, really, from my experience, is your ability to actually provide the core product. For example, you do not need to have deep culinary experience to own a hot dog franchise or a pizza place. That's where the franchisor comes in. In fact, some franchises even discourage people with food experience to own their food franchise because they don't want to undo someone's personal preferences. McDonald's is a wildly successful and well-known, really the grandfather of all franchises in this country. And I don't think they would ever say that they make the best hamburger ever. What they do provide is a consistent product that's well marketed and presented in a fun environment. So it's not always about your skill set for the actual core product or core service you provide. It's about being able to handle the franchisor's operating procedures properly and to work with them so that it's a consistent product throughout. So some of the things that you can look for in any franchise system, some of the general characteristics that might indicate that that franchisor is doing a good job and has happy franchisees. A couple things to look for. Multi-unit owners or operators. So what that means is that someone joined that franchise system, opened their first store, took on their first territory, maybe got their first handyman truck on the road, and then continued to spend more money to replicate their own experience with that franchise company. So for example, let's go back to a sandwich shop. They open one, and then 2 years later they decide they want to open another one, and another, and another. It's a rare person who will actually open something, go into business for themselves, and then continue to do something that's not working for them over and over again, especially when there's money involved and time and commitment. So if you speak to a franchisor and they have a very high percentage of multi-unit owners, i.e. people who own more than one unit, it's usually a pretty good sign that it's working for them and that they're going to continue to do it. Conversely, if you find a franchise company that has no multi-unit owners, you might ask why. Why aren't these people replicating it? If it's working really well, why aren't they doing it 2 or 3 or 4 more times? It's the easiest business for them to recreate because they already own one store. They can share resources, they can share their personnel, they can share their overall experience. You can make a pretty compelling case as a franchisor that if your franchisees are buying more and more units or opening up additional territories, that you're doing a good job. Another positive sign that a franchisor is doing a good job is to look at what their current franchisees are saying. If you have a franchisor who gives you their contact information of all their franchisees, you can get usually off the website or it's in their franchise disclosure documents called an FDD, which you'll get from any franchise company. They need to give it to you. In there has all the names of the franchisees and all their information. So having said that, when you do contact their franchisees, ask them what their experience has been. Find out exactly what it costs for them to open up the franchise. Ask them what the support has been like. Ask them what their overall experience has been in sales and growth and that type of thing. That will give you a first-hand understanding of what the franchisees are experiencing and what you can anticipate to experience. Now, you will probably, depending on how big the franchise system is, you will probably get some people who have had a negative experience. That doesn't mean that it's absolutely a bad franchise. But what I would do is I would continue to ask questions. If you talk to somebody who says things like, the advertising the franchisor provides doesn't work, I use my own. And then you say, okay, well, how are you doing? Horribly, I'm not making any money. And you speak to 10 other franchisees who do use that advertising and are doing well, that might be an indication that one franchisee maybe isn't following along with the program, is not doing well because of it. So those types of things you should look out for. Also, the number of failed franchise units is important to think of. Now, they may have 2, 3, 4. It's really not an indication that it's a bad franchise system because a lot of the franchisors that are very, very successful today have had units that didn't make it. It does happen. Usually it happens because the wrong franchisee hooked up with the wrong franchisor and opened a business that they really weren't well suited for or weren't well capitalized for. So if you do find a franchisor that has a certain number of failed units, you really, really want to get an understanding of why they didn't make it. Often the franchisor might not give you the whole story or might give you their view of the story of why that franchisee didn't make it or why that store closed. You always can ask existing franchisees why they think that unit didn't make it. So number of failed units doesn't automatically discount a franchisor, doesn't immediately tell you that it's not good for you, but you do want to understand why they failed in those certain markets or what type of people do really well. So again, when you're looking at a franchise company, you want to look at number of failed units. You want to speak to the franchisees and ask them a whole slew of questions, including the most critical question, which is, would you buy into this franchise system again? Which is really a very telling question. And you really want to understand what your daily operations are going to be like. What do you do as the franchisee? What is your responsibility? Asking these questions and getting good feedback from the franchisees and the franchisor, visiting sites, are all tools that you can use to find, for you, what would be the best franchise.